Hello, everyone, and welcome to another story time. It's Sunday, so you know what that means. We're reading a new chapter from A Taste of Your Own Magic, Book 2 in the Agents of A.S.E.T series, and we are actually almost done with this book. I can't believe this one it went by so fast. We are reading chapter 26 and 27 today out of, I think it was chapter 34. 34 chapters. So we are really, really close to finishing this book. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am because there are 2 more books left in this series. So you'll have to let me know in the comments section if you are going to want to jump on to the next book when we're done with this, or if you might want to check out one of the other many, many books that I have available. But we're here to read today. So I'm not going to waste too much time. We're going to jump right on into chapter 26. They marched Luke straight up to the top floor of A.S.S.E.T. The elevator doors parted, and Gray pressed forward, pushing Luke towards the reception desk. Sage's gut tightened every time she saw someone sitting there. She'd avoided getting to know the new receptionist. Nothing against the new girl, but the ghost of Rena haunted that desk. And even though the two didn't look a thing alike, all Sage could see was Rena's face and the false smile that had lured her into trust. As they marched past, Sage did a double take. The little pixie of a girl had tears in her eyes. Before she could stop herself to ask, Gray cleared his throat to get Sage's attention. He opened the door and all but shoved Luke inside. "Do you treat all your prisoners so well?" Luke asked. "Yes," Gray replied. Sage had expected to see Ava's nose buried in her computer, but the office was empty and her laptop closed. "You're lucky the boss is out." "Am I?" Luke scrunched up his face, confusion creasing his brow. "Is there something you need to tell us?" Sage's heart skipped a beat. "Did you know she wouldn't be here? Had they already completed the amulet?" "You know my tongue is held in check by my master." "I've said all I can." Luke sank down into the chair in front of Ava's desk. He looked like a man without a care in the world, and yet that had to be a lie. His fate, whether he admitted it or not, was tied to the amulet, and the last attempt had cursed him. Maybe that was it, Sage hoped. If he knew that the end would result in his freedom and some other master being cursed into his life, maybe he truly would have nothing to fear. And that was a far better outcome than the alternative. Sage nearly said as much, but Ava stormed into the room, carrying a great axe in one hand, resting it on her shoulder, and a thick file and a green folder in the other. Some papers had been roughly shoved inside and looked as if they had been rained on. "I thought I could trust you two to solve this case quickly." She rounded the corner of her desk and slapped the file down. "You now have another missing person to add to your tally, and this one is much more high profile. I have the whole Shade Guild right up my ass." Ava's voice trailed off as she noticed Luke in the opposite chair. "What is that?" She thrust her axe at the Djinn sitting quietly in his chair. "This is Luke," Sage chirped in with pride, "and he's the Djinn being employed to... Unless he is going to make our missing people materialize here in my office, I don't care what his name is." "He's got information we need, but he can't tell us," Sage replied. Ava's gaze fell to Luke's arms, zeroing in on the living tattoos. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Her brows pulled together, causing fine lines to appear above them. Ava set her axe down on the desk next to her laptop and took a seat. "Obviously, you're no closer to learning the truth of why Sylvia has now been added to our missing persons list." "We sort of thought..." Sage cut herself off. "Wait, did you say Sylvia?" "No, we just spoke with her." "Impossible. Her husband reported her missing this morning." Ava all but growled the words. "We were just there at her office, I swear," Sage replied. "But were you talking to her?" Luke commented casually. "What the hell's that supposed to mean?" Sage turned to Gray, hoping that he'd have an answer, or at the very least back her up. But her partner stood mute, stroking his chin, while thoughts obviously percolated in his mind. We were there getting the full brunt of her temper for not solving the case. Pretty sure I didn't dream that. I need this case closed now, Ava demanded. He's the key to helping us close it, Sage offered, patting Luke on the shoulder. A Djinn, especially one directly involved in the case, is not a reliable source of information. Throw him in a cell and keep him there while you two continue the investigation. But we know his master's the one taking people. Sage reached into her bag and pulled out the leather notebook that Luke had given her. She tossed it in front of Ava. This is what they're being used for. Ava glanced at it curiously before taking the book in hand. She quietly looked over the pages, her eyebrows arching with interest as she flipped to the amulet's information. When we spoke to Sylvia, did you notice anything odd about her? Gray's whisper broke the quiet that had fallen over the room. No, Sage answered without thinking. I can't recall seeing her shift the whole time we spoke with her. Gray continued, prompting Sage to change gears and have a look at her memories. Had Sylvia morphed into her usual black cloud of doom? She had certainly employed her cheeky demeanor. Sylvia's words had been as sharp as ever, but Sage hadn't paid that much attention to what she looked like. Terrors were supposed to be able to see through magic. If someone was impersonating Sylvia with a glamour, either she or Gray should have been able to tell. Or would they? Sage remembered how easily she'd been fooled by the animal sanctuary. Shifters were of two forms. On the surface, she only saw one at a time, but when she paid closer attention, the shadowy other half became apparent. Was Luke's master a shifter? We have to learn who his master is, Sage demanded. He's the key, the missing piece. Put that Djinn in a cell, Ava directed the order at Gray. Now. A look of pure satisfaction spread across Luke's face. He held his hand up, as if waiting for cuffs. As you command. You see, he's participating willingly. Even as Sage said the words, a bad feeling prickled at the back of her neck. Something was off, but she couldn't quite figure it out. Was Luke triggering it, or Ava? Look, we don't have to lock him up. It doesn't matter what he wants, Ava said. I know, he's a dirty trickster who can't be trusted. He is not in control of his own mind, Ava countered. All his master has to do is recall him and he'll poof away. Where would that leave you? Well, what good does it do us to stick him in a cell then? Sage asked. You expect me to reveal our secrets in here, in front of him? Ava glared back at Sage as if daring her to speak. Do you want me on guard duty? Gray asked, his tone cautious. Ava set the book down and pointed her finger straight at the page with the amulet. No. Sage looked at the spot where a boss's finger had landed, the list of magical ingredients needed to complete the amulet. Neutral magic from a Terra. He's to be quarantined, and if he manages to escape, following him is exactly what his master wants. Whomever they are, they need one of us to finish the job. Ava pressed the button on her desk. Recall all agents and have them check into the building ASAP. No questions asked. Quarantine the building as well, and all personnel of magical lineage other than Terras are to be sent home until further notice. We can't hide forever. Sage had the thought. That was the exact scenario, but knew it wouldn't solve the problem. It's only going to put a bandage on the situation. We don't have to. The master will eventually come for their Djinn when he doesn't return, and I think he knows that. Ava's nose crinkled as she turned her attention to Luke. His smile never faltered. Nor did he show even the slightest sense of unease, even under the scrutinizing eyes of Ava. I suspect you have some tricks up your sleeve. I'm ready to see my room now. Can we really keep him here? Sage asked. Sever the connection between him and his master? Ava's expression darkened as Sage became the latest target of her frightening glare. Gray took Luke by the arm and lifted him out of his seat with an eagerness that bordered on fear. "Let's go, Genie." "As you command," Luke replied mockingly. The door slammed behind the men as they left, and Sage gulped, realizing she had drawn the short stick, being left with Ava, a person far scarier than the Djinn had proven to be. She waited anxiously in silence, hoping Ava wouldn't decide to pick up the axe and use it on her. She had been so confident that her boss would be the one to sort this mess out, but as she lifted her eyes, Sage found Ava looking just as worried as she was. Ava pinched the bridge of her nose and collapsed into her office chair. "We don't have a magical prison cell, do we?" Sage asked. "Not one that can hold a Djinn from being called back to his master." "So that was all for show? A trick for the trickster?" "Precisely. Stalling for time." "Got it. Fake it till you make it." "This is hardly the occasion for levity, Miss Cynwrig. Do you understand the severity of what we're up against?" "Yes, ma'am." Sage's voice cracked. Ava saw straight through the lie. "How could you?" She lifted the book and set it back down with a sigh. If this amulet." She took a few breaths, her eyebrows knitted together, and deep creases appeared across her brow, teasing the age that had been blurred by immortality. "No one should have this kind of power. Not only does it throw the natural balance off, but one person having that much power is bound to cause chaotic disaster. Tyranny, wars, destruction, it all goes hand in hand. And because the Terra are part of the spell, we lose our ability to protect the world. That's the whole reason for our people's creation, and it becomes moot." Ava cracked the smallest of smiles. Her approval meant the world to Sage at that moment, instilling a sense of hopeful pride that she hadn't realized she needed. The moment ended, though, as quickly as it came. Ava's eyes found Sage's neck, and her expression brightened beyond approval and straight to guaranteed victory. "We do have one thing that can negate all magic." Sage's hand moved instinctively towards her necklace. Although she craved the feeling of purpose and pride for continuing her mother's legacy, the resolution Ava was insinuating cheapened it. "That's supposed to remain a secret, not to be used because of how dangerous it is." Was she being tested? "Have you read this book?" "I looked it over, yeah." "Then how can you argue against stopping the creation of something that threatens the balance that we're charged to protect?" Framed in that light, Ava's words did make sense. "I'm not arguing your point, but it feels wrong to use something that you entrusted me to keep secret." "Desperate times," Ava replied without hesitation. "To use it would reveal the secrets of its whereabouts. Won't that cause other issues?" "Leave mitigating the damages to me. You just do as you're ordered." "You think my using the seed on the Djinn will stop this master from completing the amulet?" "Djinn magic is part of the equation." Ava didn't sound completely convinced, but at the same time, she had no other suggestion. "I'm not sure I like the sound of this." Sage stood and paced the room. "We could possibly kill Luke. And what if his master finds another Djinn later? Do we kill them too? Maybe the next time we won't find him until it's too late. And the master completes their work. Then what? We can't fight an unstoppable force." "If Luke is as honorable as you think he is, he wouldn't have come here if he didn't think you had a chance of helping. If his intentions are less than honorable or motivated by his master, neither of them could possibly know about the ace we're hiding up our sleeves." She pointed again at Sage's necklace. "Either way, we have the upper hand, and you and Gray have more time to track down the master while they're scrambling to find a new Djinn." "But you're asking me to kill him," Sage countered. "Collateral damage. It's expected in war." "We're not at war yet." Sage grasped for anything that might help her case. Ava might have grown accustomed to death over the long years, but Sage was still coming to grips with Rena's death, and being asked to end another's life so soon felt like a Herculean task that she wasn't ready to wrap her mind around. Give me the necklace then, and I'll do it if you don't have the courage. Ava reached a hand out across her desk. No, this isn't right. I was made guardian over this weapon because it needed to be in the hands of somebody who wouldn't use it. Can't, Ava corrected. Won't. Atera can't use magic, but all I have to do is let someone else hold it. You know that. I do. And I also know when exceptions must be made for the greater good. Sage, we can't let this master complete this amulet. We have a duty to protect magic at all costs. Ava stood, looking more terrifying than she had ever before. She held out her hand again, demanding that Sage give up the necklace. No, Sage answered with a defeated sigh. I'll go talk to Luke. I'll come with you then, Ava said. No, Sage added with a little more strength to her voice. If you want me to do this, I have to do it my way. Alone. You know I'll be watching on the cameras. Watch all you want. Sage turned and headed out of the office, not sure what she would do when she reached Luke's cell. His death wasn't the answer. That she felt certain of. Other djinns could be found to complete the master's work, but maybe just the threat of the end for Luke, with the devastating consequences, would be enough to help him fight his master's control? Maybe give her a clue where to find the real baddie? Chapter 27. How exactly does the Angel of Death greet their victims? Quick and painless? Sage could throw the seed at him, and when he caught it, poof. Would it be kinder to have a conversation before the deed was done? Explain herself and apologize before ending him? The weight of the duty pressed on her with each step she took. With any luck, it would crush her before she could reach the elevators. How could Ava ask her to do this? She'd offered to do it herself, but the way Ava had jumped so eagerly to take control of the seed had been just as unsettling as asking Sage to do it. Maybe even more. Ava wasn't evil. A micromanaging overlord? Sure, but not evil. However, in the presence of ultimate power, even the best can be turned. Her phone buzzed, one distraction too many to deal with. She left it in her pocket without answering as she pressed the elevator button. There had to be some other way to avoid killing Luke. That just felt wrong on so many levels. But unless she found the answer before she reached his cell, she'd have to. Her phone buzzed again as she rode down the elevator toward the prison level. She pulled it out far enough to see it was Matt calling. Not now, she groaned, and sent the call to voicemail. Worst time ever for her to be getting a phone call. He'd hear all about this adventure later, if she could look him in the eye after being forced to assassinate a djinn who'd come to her for help. The elevator doors parted, and Sage nearly collided with Gray as she stepped out. What did Ava say? He asked. That we should take shifts watching him. I'm first, she lied, but failed to nail the casual tone in her voice. Gray planted his feet, crossing his arms. His eyes narrowed as he stared at her. I don't think that's exactly what Ava said. How about we try that again? Why? Because I'm not capable of standing guard? Gray sighed. I thought we were going to stop this. You started it, she threw the words at him. You're hiding something. He was an impassable wall, preventing her from heading down the hallway towards Luke's cell. With good reason, okay? She tried to move, but he took her by the shoulders. I can't worry. I can't be worried about my partner. She shrugged free of his grip. Oh, is that what you call it? In my own way? Yes. I don't want to see anything bad happen to you. What about having to do bad things? Gray's expression darkened. Whatever, just stop being a jerk, she huffed. Might make working together a bit easier. Then be honest with me. What's going on? It became painfully clear that Gray wasn't taking no for an answer this time. Magical gag order. Talk to Ava if you want those details. The moment the words left Sage's lips, Gray's posture changed. His angry eyes softened. Can you do what she asked? Sure, Sage lied. A little more confidently this time. As much as she hated Gray's cocky swagger, his pity was far more off-putting. Whatever she asked you to do, it's probably for the best. Gray put a hand on her shoulder again, this time in solidarity. Serving the greater good puts us in positions we never wish to be in. His reaction not only confirmed that he understood the magnitude of what she'd been ordered to do, but proved he'd been in her position more than once himself. And as he turned to let her pass, she realized he hadn't asked her to tell him more. Her phone buzzed again. Why was Matt calling her? Something deep down said she should answer, but talking to him would kill her resolve to complete the task that she'd been assigned. He'd have to forgive her and be prepared for the emotional flood she would come home with. Sage pocketed her phone and made the long walk down the cell block, filled with heavy doors. Luke had been placed in the cell at the far end, and the walk felt endless, like every step she took added 2 more to her journey. When she finally reached the end and opened the door with a scan of her hand, she found Luke lounging comfortably on the cot against the wall. His face was the picture of serenity, as if he were completely content to be locked away. More comfortable than a magic lamp? Sage asked with a nervous laugh. Is it to be torture then, before I'm executed, or were you actually trying to be funny? Luke sat up. The rack is far less painful than the amateur hour you're about to deliver. Touché, Sage replied. I'm surprised they sent you. I expected your partner to be the one to do it. Despite the seriousness of his words, he still appeared content. I wish I knew whether or not to trust you. Sage took a step closer, scrutinizing his face for any tells. No one looks their murder in the eye and smiles, and yet that was exactly what he was doing. What does your gut tell you? Luke patted the spot next to him on the cot. She shook her head at the gesture. Kind as it was, she didn't feel like sitting. My gut doesn't feel like you deserve death. Death comes for us all. Have to admit, I'm glad it's you, and not the grumpy one. You make for such a bittersweet end. He spoke with the same natural charm as Marin the Magnificent had. You knew all along that if we brought you in, it would mean death. I had my suspicions, he shrugged. Though I'm uncertain of the method. We Djinn are hard to kill. Your death serves the Master's ability to wish the amulet into completion. A valid theory. One I've entertained myself. And if that is the judgment of your boss, he held out his hands and winked, then hack away at my magical chains. Sage's phone buzzed again. She tried to ignore it. Why are you so eager? My intentions confuse you, he countered. Obviously. Because under the control of my master, I can never be sure when my intentions are truly mine. Many times they are the will of my master, and their wish is uttered into my talisman. He winced and doubled over. With his head between his knees, Luke's breathing suddenly stuttered. Are you okay? Sage asked, unsure if she should help him or not. Her phone buzzed again, and she nearly chucked it across the room. As if her frustrated growl had awakened him from his fit, Luke rose and met Sage's eyes. You really should answer that. Okay, she said slowly. This was the kind of moment she really wished she had her partner for. Luke was up to something. Or he wasn't, and she was looking into the eyes of his master. Either way, answering the phone felt like opening Pandora's box, and yet she was powerless to stop herself. Sage pulled the buzzing phone from her pocket and answered it. Kinda busy, Matt. It's not nice to play with other people's toys, a woman replied. Sage's heart nearly stopped. She'd never heard the voice before, but it had all the hallmarks of Sylvia's haughty temper. Who is this? Sage snarled into the phone. Her eyes flashed to Luke with deadly promise of retribution. I'm sorry, Sage. Luke faded from the room, leaving behind the empty cot he'd been sitting in. You play with my toys, I play with yours. The woman disconnected the call. Matt. Sage wailed. She had to save him. She had to get to him somehow. And that is the end of that chapter. So next week, we will jump into chapter 28 and figure out what happened to Matt, Luke, and who the mystery woman is. So anybody out there today in the chat room? Let's see. Who do we have? Eugene says time zones are dumb. Yes, they are. I hate time zones. I always get them confused. Although lately I have not been able to manage to be consistent with when I start my readings. They're usually between 1-ish and 2-ish, but I haven't really like nailed down a time. Facebook wasn't working right. Yeah, it seems like the stream to Facebook doesn't seem to work as well as the stream to YouTube. So, and I don't know any other way to get notifications out, unless, you know, the notifications on YouTube are actually working. I've heard that sometimes they're not. But I try to post, you know, a little bit beforehand on Facebook to let people know. I set up the stream so it's got a little bit of leeway time. I guess just make sure you're following. Sorry. I wish I had better advice for you, but I have no clue how to make the social media outlets actually do what they say they're supposed to do. Ava with an axe. How many bosses do you know go into a business meeting with an axe on their shoulder? Like a literal axe on their shoulder. I love Ava. Will his cell be a bottle? That's right. Hi, Misty. If you're following me on Facebook, I post the notifications usually in my author page, on my personal page, on the group. So I try and make it as widely spread as possible to let people know that I'm going to be doing a reading. But remember, they are every Sunday. That's the day that I do my readings. So just make sure you're following and you should get the notifications. But like I said to Rebecca, I try and I can't make Facebook do it. But I do try and get the notifications out at least an hour beforehand to let people know to prepare and what time it's going to be out. All of these characters are complicated. Well, yeah, aren't they supposed to be complicated? I mean, that's good, right? I hope. Anybody have any guesses on who the mystery woman was? That might be hard to decipher. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see if anybody's got any guesses here. But yeah, we are towards the very end of this book. I think we've got 34 chapters in total, and we're going to start chapter 28 next week. So we're getting close to it. We're hitting the climax now. The next few chapters are going to fly by with all of the action and crazy that's about to happen. So I can't wait to jump into those. And depending on how long they take to read, I may do 2 chapters at a time. I may do 3. Because they do kind of all need to be read together because it's really very fast paced from here on out. So we'll see. We'll see what the timeline is. I don't like to make these readings longer than like 30 minutes or so because I know we don't want to take up too much time. It's your day of rest, right? It's Sunday. It's time to relax and sit back. So I appreciate everybody who does show up and hang out with me during these readings. And if Rebecca, if you're still listening, how many flubs were there today? Because I feel like I tripped over every other sentence. I don't know why I can't seem to get my brain and my eyes and my mouth all in the same sync. But whatever. That's just what it is. That's a live reading for you, right? It's going to be how it is. And I was never a good reader in like school in classes when I had to read out loud. You know, in your head, you can always read a lot faster and a lot clearer, but I've always had that little hiccup when I read out loud. So that's just me, but I'm sure other people have the same problems. Not all of us are perfect like you, Rebecca, because you are fabulous when you do your readings. And hopefully this week I'll actually be able to make to yours live. I keep trying every week, but it's life gets in the way. Life gets in the way. Yep. Any flubs. Didn't matter. Story was too good. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I needed that boost of confidence. All right, guys. Well, we are at 30 minutes, so I will let you go, and I will see you back next week with the next 2 to 3 chapters. We'll see. We'll see how long it takes to read them because, like I said, I don't want to take up too much time, but they do all kind of go together, and it is very fast paced from here to the end because we are definitely racing to the finish, and there's a lot of crazy coming. Anyways, all right, I love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. Remember to take some time this week to take care of yourself. Do something for you this week that makes you happy. And I will be back next week with more fun chapters. Thanks for hanging out.